Holy crap, I barely got on and already got somebody watching. I bet that's Jugs. I bet Jugalassus is already in here watching. Jugs, is that you? It's alright, Jugs, you can tell me. But anyway, hey, welcome to Minnesota Black Robe Regiment Podcast, MBRR Pod, where we are the home of accountability for the state and public servants. That's what this channel is about. It's what this channel's always been about, and it's what the channel will continue to be as long as I am able to experience life to its fullest in my pursuit of happiness. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So while I'm waiting for the notifications to get sent out all over the world here, like quite literally, I got people view my content from Australia, Great Britain, Norway. I don't know about any of the other countries that probably need to learn a lot more about freedom and liberty. But there's no country in the world that needs to learn more about freedom and liberty than these United States of America. But yeah, so here we sit. Well, there again, while we're waiting, hope everybody's having a great Wednesday afternoon. I'm ducking out of work a little early, heading down home to get ready to set up for my good friend Rebecca Whiting, who is running for the United States Senate as the fully nominated, fully endorsed candidate for the Libertarian Party here in Minnesota. She has taken on Amy Klobuchar and Royce White, and there are other third-party candidates, and I can't even begin to remember them all. But Rebecca Whiting is the preferred candidate. If you know anything about the Constitution, if you love liberty, if you love freedom, and you want to actually stand up for those things, even if you don't live in Minnesota, you should check out her website, whitingforsenate.us, I think it is. But yeah, anywho, and by the way, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, you should. Even if you hate the content, even if you are a back the blue at all costs, all cops are heroes, even if you're a person who believes that the price that we pay to live in a civilized society is to pay taxes to fund the state, this content will be good for you. In fact, it might even be better for you than it is for others. And because I think you'll have your eyes open. And it's not easy to be challenged. It's not. And I understand that because I had to spend a great portion of my life living in cognitive dissonance. I claim to be this liberty-loving, oath-keeping, patriotic individual. Remained in the Republican Party for those reasons. Back the blue at all costs. I could come up with excuse after excuse after excuse why the state at all of her levels was good for us, why we needed the state, why we might need smaller government, but we still needed the state, and therefore taxation was a necessary evil. It actually was a good. So I was there. And so I know for the first time tuning into my channel, this is probably going to be, for some of you, really hard. It's going to be really hard for you to understand how any of the things I'm about to say are true or relevant to your life, but they are. And if you're a regular viewer and you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you do. And if you're a subscriber that views frequently and you haven't gone over and joined the community and become an ACT localist by joining the membership side of the channel, I would encourage you to do so. And I'm still looking for that person to pick that top tier of support to become a show producer, to get show producer credits on the show. And that will get you credits for live streams and pre-recorded stuff that I put up. So if you've got the finances, pick one level, and if you've got the finances to go to the top level, that would be awesome. I would be very appreciative. I could not thank you enough. There's no way I could show enough appreciation to the people that just watch and share. And since I mentioned the word share in my opening monologue, let's get you guys sharing this out, hitting that like button, because the corruption in Candy, Ojai County, the Willmar, Minnesota Police Department, the district known as C6, is just it just keeps handing us gifts, folks. It just keeps handing us places to turn to for more information. So as you guys know, Sunday I told you the story about Meeker County Deputy Muffley, who got a DUI back in February and got barely a slap on the wrist for the Minnesota's Post board. Kept his job, still working. You guys know about Deputy Christopher Flatten, who got a DUI while on duty, drove his squad car in Candy, Ojai County, drove his squad car drunk out of his mind, wrecked his squad, then proceeded to refuse to comply with the warrant for the drawing of his blood in the DUI case. And in telling you that story, I told you about his time with the Willmar PD and the fact that he, along with 6 others, criminally assaulted and wrongfully imprisoned one Mr. Derek Gilbert, and he is now facing not just criminal charges for his DUI, but he's now facing civil litigation for what he did to Derek Gilbert. But we're not done with Mr. Flatten yet. We're also not done with one deputy named, I want to say it's Verrier. It may be Verrier, but it's Verrier, Verrier. He's not a deputy, actually. He's a cop in Willmar. He's a police officer for the Willmar PD. And former Officer Flatten, before he became Deputy Flatten, along with Officer Verrier, did, from all of the evidence that's been presented to me, appeared to retaliate against a family member of an individual who filed a complaint against the PD as a whole. I'm trying to be vague because I'm trying not to throw too much out there right now. But instead of being able to get the person who filed the complaint, they apparently went after this person's family member and completely abused him in these charges that they have filed against him. And in filing the charges, this person, who happens to be an employee of the state of Minnesota, they're still employed in their capacity as an employee. They still have their job, but they are out of their job because of the nature of the charge. And the charge is a result of a, for lack of better terminology, which is a trumped up burglary charge and a trumped up assault charge, when the person who's being charged was the victim of the assault. Not even kidding. And the person who's being charged with burglary of another individual's property had permission to be there, and this individual who owns the property, who gave the person permission to be there, is willing to testify on behalf of the person who's being wrongfully charged. And Officer Flatten, now Deputy Flatten, was involved in that case. Shock of all shocks. And then to make matters worse, Officer Verrier is involved, of course. But why is this important? Well, because in Minnesota, you have a right to a speedy trial, and this young man has never been in trouble with the law, ever. He knows nothing about the legal system. He knows next to nothing about how this stuff works. And so when he was asked, "So would you like to waive your right to a speedy trial?" he didn't know what was going on, because you see in the state of Minnesota, they have a very limited amount of time if you choose to go speedy trial, if you demand speedy trial. They have to give it to you in, is it 120 days? I think it is in Minnesota. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he waived his right to a speedy trial. And so now we're well over 120 days, and he still hasn't gone to court, which means he's been now burned through all of his PTO. He's burned through any kind of leave that he could possibly work through. His union has tried to get him back on the job so he's earning pay, because he's innocent until proven guilty. But the employer, the supervisor, will not let him back in because of the nature of the work and the fact that this is an assault charge and a burglary charge on top of it. So what are the courts doing? What is the prosecutor doing to help, move this matter along? Not a damn thing. The courts and the prosecutor aren't doing a damn thing to help this person out. See, in the United States, in the criminal justice system, starting with beat cops all the way up to the prison system, you have no rights. We tell you that you're innocent until proven guilty. We tell you that you have rights to an unbiased jury. We tell you that you have the right to be, put in front of a jury of your peers as soon as humanly possible. We tell you all those things, but none of that's true. None of it works. That's not how any of this works. Let's just be honest. We've all known this for a while, but in this case, in Kaneohe County, in the courts in Kaneohe County, this young man has been abused. This trial, his court has now been pushed off. This happened yesterday. Yesterday was the fourth time that this case has been pushed off of trial. Yesterday he went in for a contested omnibus, and it's all rigmarole. It's jargon, folks. It's basically pre-trial information that's exchanged, and there's testimonies and stuff given. And the first time that he went in, but it was supposed to have his contested omnibus, his attorney was also the attorney for a murder case in a neighboring county, and there was an emergency with that murder case, and his attorney asked for a continuance. So that's a pretty legit continuance. The second time that he was supposed to go in for his contested omnibus, I believe it was Flatton who failed to show up for court. Officer Flatton, whose duty it is as an officer for the Wilmer Police Department, failed to show up for court. So therefore, they couldn't have the hearing. I want you to let that sink in, folks. In that moment, that cop, Flatton, is an officer of the court. His duty is to be there. His duty is to be there. So he didn't show. Push the hearing off for, I think it was a month. So now this third time that they go in for this hearing, this young man who has been without his job, has been without income for months and months and months. The third time, Verrier doesn't show up. So it gets pushed off again at the behest of the prosecutor. And the prosecutor absolutely, for some reason, has to have these officers on the stand for this contested omnibus to make sure that this goes to trial. They need this. This is how important this is to the prosecutor. The prosecutor absolutely has to have the testimony of these cops. Well, we know Flatton's a dirty cop, right? Man, I would love to get that guy Brady listed. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could get him Brady listed? or giglioed so that he can no longer testify. To talk about, let's ruin this guy's chance at ever having a law enforcement career ever again, right? Let's get flattened on the Brady list. Let's get flattened on the giglio, right? But Verrier failed to show up for the third time. So yesterday, Verrier failed to show up again for the same hearing. That would have moved this process along for them to figure out whether or not this is even going to go to trial, if the charges are going to be dismissed out of hand by the judge. The prosecutor in open court, flat out told the judge that they weren't ready because Verrier overslept and couldn't make it because they were an hour away. He overslept, pushing this out another month for this poor guy, for this poor defendant, for the accused. This kid, and I say kid because he's way younger than me, this poor kid is, his life is in the balance, folks. He's not convicted, has no criminal history, and is losing everything, which is every single person that I've talked to in Kandiyohi County that has come forward and said, hey, look, I have information. I don't know if I want to go public because I'm terrified of retaliation. But I can tell you, I've lost everything for trumped up garbage too. Every single person that I've talked to has some sort of tale to tell, and I don't mean that in a fabricated way, has some sort of account about how the system is screwing them over and they're losing everything. And here we have a young man with children who had a respectable job helping people under the auspices of the state of Minnesota, literally an employee of the state of Minnesota, who is now completely lost their income, has burned through all their PTO, is at the risk of losing everything that they have put into their pension. And these cops are not showing up for court. And the judge granted the continuance again because Officer Verrier of the Wilmer Police Department, and I can guarantee you it's in violation of their own policy about court, because I know I have read blanket policies from multiple counties in the state of Minnesota, multiple police departments in the state of Minnesota, and I cannot speak with 100% certainty about Wilmer PD's policy, but I'd be floored if it isn't almost verbatim what every other agency out there in law enforcement in the state of Minnesota says. When you are scheduled to be in court, unless otherwise notified, you will be in court in uniform, ready to testify at the behest of the prosecutor as an officer of the court. And they get paid for it. They get paid to go to court. Verrier chose to sleep in yesterday and skip court. And I know somebody's like, well, what if you had, what if they were on duty the night before? I don't care. This individual, this young man's life is in the balance. It's hanging in the balance. You don't get to oversleep. You don't get to miss court. You don't get to keep screwing this young man over. You don't get to screw around with his freedom, with his life, with his pursuit of happiness. You don't get to do that. And it's not just this young man whose life is in the balance. The victim, the person that they're claiming is a victim of the burglary, was subpoenaed to testify on his behalf. He had to drive here, or not drive here, but had to drive to Kandiyohi County Courthouse from North Dakota to testify. to testify because he was doing some work over in North Dakota. So he missed court in this hearing on the behalf of this young man. This person who he's been told victimized him, even though he's not willing to testify as a witness for the state. He's testifying on behalf of the defendant. He lost out on a day's work. And if he hadn't shown up to court to testify, they would have issued a warrant for his arrest. If the defendant hadn't shown up for court, he would have had a warrant issued for his arrest. But now we have 3 times. Flatten, Verrier, twice have not shown up. In violation, I guarantee you, in violation of Wilmer PD's personnel handbook. I guarantee you it's in violation of their handbook. Can't say it with 100% certainty, but I'll guarantee you it's in violation of their handbook. And we're going to get that information. We are going to get that information, and we're going to make sure that it's very clear that they're violating their own agency's policies by missing court. That's right. Absolutely, automatically $500 warrant. And it had been a bench warrant too. Your body would have been grabbed and hauled in front of a judge ASAP if you didn't show. But these cops, not only are they violating policy agency, they're, again, I can almost 100% guarantee it, they're also not showing up for court that they have been subpoenaed to testify in. As the accusers in this case, working against the defendant, they cannot be troubled to show up for court. Nobody's going to issue a warrant for them. We know for damn sure that Sheriff Eric Tollefson of Kandiyohi County is not interested in exacting justice and having these people arrested because, one, the judge isn't going to issue a warrant. And this is why I talk so much about the 2-tier system. It is a 2-tier system, people. You can sit here and talk all you want about how it's not, cops get held accountable all the time, but they don't. And this is a perfect example. You have to understand that no matter what happens, I don't care if it's a cop that's off duty or if it's a cop that's on duty, when they break the law, they are handed every opportunity under the sun to hide that away. And it goes back to the reality that we talked about on Sunday with this case over in Meeker County, with this, not in Meeker County, it's again Kandiyohi County, but it was Deputy Muffley of the Meeker County Sheriff's Office gets caught driving under the influence in Kandiyohi County. He has a 16-year-old in his car at 2 o'clock in the morning after being at the bar from 5:30 in the afternoon, 5:30 in the evening until 2 o'clock a.m. Then he also has a service weapon in his care, custody, and control. Or not a service weapon, but a sidearm in his care, custody, and control. He should have been charged for that. He wasn't charged for that. He wasn't charged for that. And he pled guilty to the DWI. And I'm glad he did. But it was never released to the media, like everybody else's DWI is released to the media. He got a slap on the hand from the post certification. He still has his job. He's still working in Meeker County. Got suspended for, his license was suspended to be a law enforcement officer. His license was suspended for really just 3 days, with 117 hanging over another DUI. And in the case of Muffley, again, I found out some interesting information about his time as a law enforcement officer in Texas, and we're working on getting to the root of that. About why maybe he all of a sudden just picked up and went to Minnesota. I'm not going to give you any more details, but I'm telling you all of this to say that cops do experience the upper tier of the 2-tier system. Their names are not thrown out there into the public when they get caught doing something they're not supposed to do. Unless they're an outsider in the agency and the head of the agency wants to make an example of them because maybe they're not a team player in some respect or some regard. Look, people have got to wake up. First of all, do not believe for a minute that Republicans care about government accountability, because Republicans will bend over backwards to make excuses for cops all the time. Democrats do not hate the cops. We hear everybody throw this out there. The Democrats want to defund the police. No, they don't. They want to restructure the funding for police so that police are beholden to everything that the left has in their socio-political, socio-ideological philosophy. They want cops there to be the enforcement arm of their ideology. And that's the same thing with the Republicans. The Republicans and the Democrats. The left and the so-called conservatives, so-called liberty-loving conservative Republicans, they want police to be the enforcement arm of their personal policies. So they all bend over backwards to kiss the asses and lick the boots of the blue. Absolutely. There is no accountability for them. So in the rare instance where you see somebody actually stand up and say, no, this cop deserves to suffer a penalty, that person's probably moving out of the Republican-Democrat paradigm or duopoly. They're probably experiencing a paradigm shift. And that's the reality of where we should all be right now. We should all be moving out of that duopoly mindset, trying to decide which side represents us so we can continue to, get the results that we want by voting for them. And we need to start looking at what true liberty is and whether or not law enforcement is conducive to the liberty that we say we love. And I'll tell you right now, with this case, with this young man over in Kennesaw County, having had his trial date now pushed out, or his hearing date now pushed out another month, I would ask you about his liberty. I'd ask you about his freedom. I would ask you to consider whether or not that criminal justice system, whether or not these people that you say that you respect and honor and see them as heroes, is it heroic of Officer Flatten? Is it heroic of Officer Verrier or whatever his name is? Is it heroic of them to strip this young man of his life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? Because that's what's happened. When you look at the U.S. Code and you think about the deprivation of rights under the color of law, that's precisely what's happening to this young man. Flatten and Verrier, and the county prosecutor, and even the judge are depriving this young man of his rights under the color of law, and no one's going to do anything about it. Because that's just the way the system works. Cops don't get held accountable for not showing up to a court case that they're subpoenaed to testify in. I mean, folks, let that sink in. This young man has not been convicted. Witness in the case, on the burglary side, is willing to testify on his behalf that he didn't burglarize him, is willing to testify on his behalf that he didn't partake in an assault, but was actually the victim of an assault. But the cops have accused him, and the justice system treats him as if he is guilty, while letting the actual guilty party in the assault go free, while actually letting the guilty party, Officer Flatten and Officer Verrier of the Wilmer Police Department in Kennesaw County, those two are actually guilty of contempt of court, at the very least, of failure to appear. They will never see a day in jail for that. They're never going to get hauled in front of the judge and told, I'm sentencing you to 30 days for contempt. I'm hanging a penalty over your head for failure to show, because that's contemptuous of my time and the time of this court and of the victim. Because that's what it is now. This young man is a victim. He's a victim of the two-tier system. And so many people out there will just sit there and wash their hands of it and say, that's the way the cookie crumbles, you know. You don't want to deal with these things. Don't break the law. You know how many times I hear that from people? I hear it constantly. Don't want to deal with it, don't break the law. People say this. And it starts small. It's everything from speeding tickets on the side of the road. I hear people constantly, don't want to get a speeding ticket, don't get pulled over. Don't want to get pulled out of your car, be compliant. Don't want to get beat up by the cops, be compliant. There's no question. Was it a lawful arrest? Was it a lawful traffic stop? You know, same thing. Flatten. Let's bring Flatten up again. Beats the brakes off of Derek Gilbert. Right? Beats the brakes off of Derek Gilbert. What do they do to Flatten? Nothing. They basically accused Derek Gilbert of being a black man in the wrong place at the wrong time in Wilmer, Minnesota. Literally, that's what the response from the police department was. It was an unfortunate set of circumstances. Mr. Gilbert was a black man in Wilmer, and unfortunately, these things happen. Yeah, you know, Biff, if you're not doing anything wrong, you don't have anything to be afraid of or to worry about. This young man was visiting someone in the process of handing over custody agreement to the mother of his children, visiting the grandfather of his children, a man that he gets along with, a man who had given him permission to be there on numerous occasions. And people would say, but yet here we sit, breaking the law. The who actually is guilty of the assault, scot-free. Go scot-free. The person who violated this man's rights under U.S. Code, deprivation of rights under the color of law, Flatten and Verrier, the Wilmer Police Department, and the chief of the Wilmer Police Department are on the hook for this. The prosecutor is on the hook for this, and ultimately the judge is on the hook for this, and there's nothing. No repercussions. None. But his life is in ruins right now. He's losing everything. See, the injustice will continue until morale improves. You know, the old saying, until morale improves. Well, they're not going to reform the justice system, folks. The Republicans are not interested at all in reforming the justice system. You bring up law enforcement reform or justice system reform to a Republican, they have a conniption fit. They go apoplectic. I can't even speak right now. I say I can't speak while I sit here and speak, which is ironic. Apoplectic. I can't. I give up. Somebody say it for me. Folks, you guys can be doing this too. You can be looking into this stuff in your own community. You can be looking into your own neighborhoods, your own towns, your own cities, your own counties. You can be finding these stories. I don't know what that's. When you're maybe a Republican and you hear somebody say, maybe they're on the opposite side of the aisle from you, if you will, and they say the justice system needs to be reformed. It's in terrible shape. And you say, well, don't commit crimes. Ask yourself why a person would say it. Instead of just assuming that they're some left-wing crackpot, maybe find common ground.